Hi, welcome to week three. Your week three discussion is going to be about reviewing Epstein's types of goals and types of involvement in the promising partnerships practices that you looked at in week one. And you're going to classify your campus, school, family, and community partnerships by academic and non-academic. And then you're going to talk about what other projects seem appropriate to meet your campus needs and to benefit your students. So you've been thinking about this already. So what are other projects that you might use to meet your needs of your students? What effects have the current partnerships had on student improvement? And then how are you going to add community involvement in your future projects? For your week three assignment, we've been studying, you've had readings and videos, and we've had discussions. We've had our web conferences. In week one, you sort of looked at what you were already using as partnerships. You gathered data about them. You discussed your needs for your campus with your campus mentor, and you used data for that. And then you connected with partnerships to talk about campus goals and using Epstein's 6 principles for student success. In week two, you met with your mentor and representatives of your site-based committee to make decisions about which is the best partnership that's going to meet the needs of your campus. And remember that your partnership has to include those 6 types of activities that Epstein talks about. And at the meeting, you proposed and described a school and partnership, school, family, and community partnership. You defined the partnership's components, and you suggested identified stakeholders with their involvement. So in week three, you're going to begin to think about your new plan. You're going to outline your task. You're going to create a timeline listing who's responsible, and you're going to identify evaluation components. And you're going to be looking at Dr. Sheldon's article in your week one readings. Evaluation is really important. A lot of times we see partnerships and we see projects. We see some type of initiative in the school, but there's never evaluation. So when the end of the project or the initiative comes, no one knows whether it was successful, and if you want to continue it or if it needs to be looked at again. So really think about your evaluation as you begin to think about this for week three. So here's your rubric that you're going to follow. So in week one, in part one, you're going to establish your timeline. So what's realistic for your timeline? What are the required tasks that you're going to be doing? Who's going to be taking care of that? And when do you think that task is going to be completed? The most important thing is realistic. When is this going to be starting, and when is it going to end, and is it realistic? So I'll give you an example. So for the first task, it might be to set up a committee to re-examine your future partnerships. You might create new partnerships with new criteria and create goals for those partnerships. And so it says that the principal and the site-based decision-making committee and the committee for community partnerships will be the who, and when is that going to happen would be July 2019. So this is just an example of how you are going to do your timeline. So it's going to take you from thinking about the timeline, creating the partnerships, all the way to implementing your actual project. So week two is going to be that evaluation process that I talked about. The goal for this family school partnership that you're advocating for is, most importantly, increasing student achievement and success. You have established those measurable goals in week two, and now you need to know, did your partnership meet those goals? So you're going to take a look at Shelton's reading in week one, and then the Community and Student Engagement Toolkit in week two, which is the House Bill 5. So I've kind of given you some examples. It talks about describing the evaluation process that you will use to assess the outcomes of the proposed family school community partnership. And I've just said the committee is going to evaluate data that's gathered by teachers, the coordinator, counselors, and the PTA decide whether the goals are being met. And the committee will meet twice a year to evaluate and examine the data. The midpoint meeting will be the first time that the data is examined, and the end of the year meeting will determine if the partnership met its goal and to restructure it if needed. The committee is going to use raw numbered data, and the data will show either increases, decreases, or stagnation of participation in the goals that this partnership has established, and the partnership is effective if there is an increase in all the goal categories. Measurable goals, remember we talked about this last week. They have to be able to be quantified. And so if you'll take a look at the bottom, it talks about measurable goals are things that can be measured. So you can improve parent attendance at the parent-teacher conferences by 10% over last year's average. So if you had 100 parents in 2013-14, if you have 110 in 2014-15, then your goal has been met. This is a very simple goal, but it just kind of shows you what that looks like. Okay, so what are the measurable goals that you've established for the proposed family school community partnership, and what criteria will be used to determine if that partnership has met its goals? I've just said we're going to increase student attendance from 92 to 97%, and we're going to use PEIMS data, and we'll do a direct comparison of the previous school year to the current school year. So they can be that simple. It can be things like increase parental involvement by 10%, just like we talked about a second ago. So if you've got 100 parents attending and you want to increase it by 10, then you would have 110. And then how do you envision that data being used from the evaluation process? And I've just said once it's gathered and analyzed, we'll make new goals to increase the success. Once the goals have been met, we'll use the data from the year to create new goals. As deemed by all the committee members, new goals will be approved by the superintendent, and the process will start again. The idea is to keep the data and dissect the data to find correlations and causes for unacceptable performances, and the data will keep the school successful and relevant to the community and to the families. So that's your week 3. It's really thinking about what are the timelines and how are you going to know if this project is successful or not. So you really need to think about that. I hope you have a great week, and if you have questions, please make sure you contact your IA or your course professors. And see you on Monday night for our web conferences.